Hi, this is HL from thehollywoodliberal.com, and welcome to our latest installment of NBC News' Raw Video blog. This is our weekly report from Hollywood, and today it's Oscar Day in Hollywood, and I'm sitting here right now high above the Kodak Theater, where the stars are currently filing in and they're getting ready to start the show. There's a bunch of helicopters flying around right now overhead, so you may have heard the noise, and one of them is a big banner, or actually it's a plane with a big banner trailing behind it saying, "Bring the troops home now." Everybody now is for ending this war in Iraq as soon as possible, except of course for Bush and Cheney and a few of their henchmen and business associates. But everybody here in Hollywood also believes the same. It'll be interesting to see if anybody makes any kind of speeches from the podium, as they did, as Michael Moore did a couple of years ago when he won an Oscar. Al Gore is going to be here. He's up for nomination for his movie An Inconvenient Truth. He's the odds-on favorite to win, and there is a little speculation that he may possibly announce his candidacy tonight from the stage if he wins the award. And I'd be all for that. I think Al Gore won the first election that he ran in 2000. He should have been the president. He should still be president, and this world would be a lot better place if he had. Okay, so let's get back to some of our stories that we've been covering this week. Of course, we've been sticking with the Iraq story, and we have a story right now that we're going to look at that we ran yesterday called Weekend in Iraq, and actually consists of several stories from AP. The first one titled Bomber Strikes Iraq Baghdad College, 41 Dead, and a little excerpt. Suicide bomber triggered a ball-bearing pack charge Sunday, killing at least 41 people at a mostly Shiite college whose main gate was left littered with blood-soaked students' notebooks and papers amid the bodies. Witnesses said a woman carried out the attack at the business school annex of Masiriania University. I'm not sure of that pronouncement, but Interior Ministry officials said it was investigating the reports. The school's main campus was hit by a string of bombings last month that killed 70 people. Also in Baghdad, truck blasts killed 35 at Iraqi mosque. The truck exploded Saturday as worshippers left the Sunni mosque west of Baghdad, killing at least 35 people and injuring more than 60, in an apparent sign of increased internal Sunni battles between insurgents and those opposing them. The imam of the mosque, about 50 miles west of Baghdad, had spoken out against militants fighting the U.S.-backed government, including the group Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Another story from Iraq: former UN envoy supports Iraq pullout, as does everybody, right? Washington, President Bush should follow Prime Minister Tony Blair's lead and start withdrawing troops from Iraq, former UN Ambassador Richard Holbrooke said Saturday. Engaging in a broad-based diplomatic offensive and beginning a redeployment of U.S. forces in Iraq represents the best way to secure American interests in the region and combat a serious threat of terrorist attack, Holbrooke, who served under President Clinton, said in the weekly radio address. And one more story from Iraq: Americans underestimate Iraqi death toll. Americans are keenly aware of how many U.S. forces have lost their lives in Iraq, according to a new AP Ipsos poll, but they woefully underestimate the number of Iraqi civilians who have been killed. Iraqi civilian deaths are estimated at more than 54,000 and could reach much higher. Some unofficial estimates range into the hundreds of thousands. The UN Assistance Mission for Iraq reports that more than 34,000 deaths in 2006 alone. Among those polled for the AP survey, however, the median estimate of Iraqi deaths was around 9,890. Actually, according to some surveys I've seen, the death toll could be as high as 650,000 innocent Iraqis. Add to that the over 3,000 U.S. soldiers that have been killed in Iraq, and the whole boondoggle just keeps getting worse and worse. More and more people are calling for the pullout, and I'm hoping it's going to start happening soon, or somehow Bush is going to see the light and somebody's going to somehow convince him that it's time to start getting these troops out of Iraq and getting them home. Our second story is about Dick Cheney, and it's posted it yesterday on the Hollywood Liberal blog, and it's called Count Cheney Speaks on the Issues of the Day. Iraq War Remarkable, Al Gore Bad. First story from AP: Cheney defends war, attacks critics. Answering growing questions in the U.S. and Australia, he defended the Iraq War as a remarkable achievement in one speech, and dismissed suggestions his influence in Washington is waning. At a news conference Saturday, Cheney warned that all options are on the table if Iran continues to defy UN-led efforts to end Tehran's nuclear ambitions, leaving the door open for military action. Cheney's support for the Iraq War, he is considered one of the key proponents of the 2003 invasion, drew protest into Sydney streets for 2 days as Cheney was there in Australia to speak. Another story from thinkprogress.org. Cheney there does not appear to be a consensus that global warming is caused by man. An excerpt. In his latest report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change concluded it was very likely, or more than 90% probable, that human activities led by burning fossil fuels explain most of the warming in the past 50 years. Continuing the Bush administration's long resistance to the science of global warming, Vice President Dick Cheney said today a consensus is lacking on whether global warming is caused by human activity from an interview with ABC. Cheney later added in an interview, "I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but he appears comfortable enough with his knowledge to suggest that the scientists are all wrong." Well, Dick Cheney and George Bush will have you believe that there's no such thing as global warming. Why wouldn't they? They're supported by the oil companies. There's been several stories over the past couple of weeks in the news about how the oil companies have been paying scientists to put out bad information about how there is no global warming. Maybe if Al Gore, who's right behind me in this theater right now, wins the award for his movie An Inconvenient Truth, more and more people will become aware of what's going on in the world with global warming, because something needs to be done before the whole world, the ice around the whole entire world starts to melt, and we'll be in a lot of trouble then. And in our final story today on NBC's HL's News Raw vlog, we have a story from The Nation magazine, and it's called A Trial of Thousands, Denied Trial. U.S. torture and interrogation tactics finally being put on trial. And here's a little excerpt from the story. Something remarkable is going on in a Miami courtroom. The cruel methods U.S. interrogators have used since September 11th to break prisoners are finally being put on trial. This was not supposed to happen. The Bush administration's plan was to put Jose Padilla on trial for allegedly being part of a network linked to international terrorists. But Padilla's lawyers are arguing that he is not fit to stand trial because he is driven insane by the government. According to his lawyers and two mental health specialists who examined him, Padilla has been so shattered that he lacks the ability to assist in his own defense. He is convinced that his lawyers are part of a continuing interrogation program and sees his captors as protectors. In order to prove that the extended torture visit upon Mr. Padilla has left him damaged, his lawyers want to tell the court what happened during those years in the Navy brig. The prosecution strenuously objects, maintaining that Padilla is competent, that his treatment is irrelevant. U.S. District Judge Marcia Cook disagrees. It's not like Mr. Padilla was living in a box. He was at a place. Things happened to him in that place. The judge has ordered several prison employees to testify at the hearings on Padilla's mental state, which begins February 22nd. They will be asked how a man alleged to have engaged in elaborate anti-government plots now acts in the words of brig staff, like a piece of furniture. My take on the whole matter is, when 9/11 occurred, Bush and Cheney wanted to round up a bunch of people, a bunch of Muslims, throw them in jail, tell everybody that they were on the ball against terrorism. Look at all the people we brought in. They threw about 5,000 people or so into Guantanamo prison and ended up releasing most of them because without trial 3 or 4 years later, because they hadn't done anything wrong, and Bush and Cheney are just stalling on some others that are still in there. They've kidnapped people, they've tortured them, they've tried to get them to break, they've put dogs on them in Abu Ghraib and worse. And I'm glad to see that this trial is going to go forward. It's about time that these tactics were stopped. It just makes us look bad as a country when we're doing this to those people, because when a so-called terrorist or insurgent kidnaps one of our soldiers, he's not going to have any hesitation about doing the same thing. We would be much better off if we just stopped with all the torture and all the extraordinary rendition to places like Syria, and just tried to live with the Geneva Convention, which establishes rules of fairness for prisoners. All right, well, next week we're going to have, more of the same from the Hollywood Liberal. We're going to be covering the Iraq War. We're going to do an Oscar follow-up. We're going to see what happens with Al Gore, if he wins the award or not. And we'll just have more good things for you, and lots of great stories. So stay tuned to the Hollywood Liberal, and we'll see you next week right here on NBC News Raw. Bye.